Hello, so I got a request to do the Ruby kit. And this was a kit that came out last year, and it was at Sephora. And the shades are kind of like, they've all kind of got a kind of pinkish red tone to them. And so those are the colors I'm going to use today. Now, the golden ruby is a little bit dark for my skin tone, and so it doesn't quite work as a highlight color. And so I am going to use Bare Escentuals Soul instead as a highlight color. You could use something like Vanilla Sugar or Rock Crystal. That's my favorite. That's like my preference. But that came out also in a kit, and I don't know if a lot of people got that or not. So if you don't have that, I think Soul's a good sub. And so all I've done is I put on my primer, a neutralizing color for my lid, and then I put a little bit of Soul just under the brow with the Bare Escentuals blending brush. So, okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take some Vintage Ruby, and this is the Eco Tools eyeshadow brush. Love this eyeshadow brush. This one kind of is a little malformed, but it comes to a little point, so it's a good brush for the crease and just general eyeshadow application. So, okay, I'm just going to start at the lash line about halfway in, maybe a little bit more. I think I'm kind of going a little bit more, but that's okay. We're going to come back and do some foiling and stuff, so it's not going to matter too much. So you don't have to be too neat about it. I sometimes like to put a dry base of a color on so that it'll make it look blended whenever you foil. So we're going to go from the lash line, and we're going to go above the crease here. And again, I love the shape of this brush. It's a good brush for my eye shape, I think. And I'm just going to go above the crease, so you can put the point of the brush like into your crease, and then since it's tapered, it'll make a nice swoosh of color above the crease, which I like. So I think the other side's a little darker. Okay. And we just want that to look pretty well blended. We'll come back with the Soul and blend out the edges a little bit so it won't look so harsh, but and you just want to keep going with that until they look about even. So, actually, all right. Okay, so we're going to take some Vintage Ruby and foil it. It's the same color we were just using. This is a concealer brush from Target, and it's just like the Target brand kind. I can't find it anymore around my Targets, but maybe your Target carries it. If they do, you should definitely get like 2 or 3 and send me one. I love this brush. I haven't found like an acceptable substitute for it. I don't know if you can see, actually, maybe just next to my face. It doesn't separate like a lot of brushes because it's kind of thick. It's not too thick, but it's like just the right thickness so that the brush doesn't really separate a lot when it's wet, and that helps you get a nice even distribution of color. So, all right, and I just went from the lash to the crease. If you want to, you can just kind of flick the brush up a little bit, and that'll help to just soften the edge there a little bit. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to take some Golden Ruby dry and just put it on the inner part of the lid from the lash line to the crease. And you can blend it up into the crease a little bit here where the end of your Vintage Ruby kind of ends, to just blur out the edge there. Okay. Okay, now we're going to take the Golden Ruby and foil it as well. And just start kind of near the center of the lid, but not quite on top of the Vintage Ruby, near the lash line. And just short little strokes to kind of put put down the color but then blend it at the same time. So you're kind of just now once you start going over the vintage ruby like I am right now, it's important to like see what it looks like from far away, because you want that kind of sort of blended gradation of color. So you don't want it to look like, oh, here's where it ends. So you want to like work it in along the edge, and especially along your lash line, just to make sure it's nice and smooth and blended, and so that it's even with the other eye. Most importantly. So, and if it needs to be blended out a little bit more, just go back over it. But once you start blending over the vintage ruby, some of that's going to get on the brush and kind of mix with the colors, and that's what'll give you that nice kind of like fade look. But if you go back on the inner corner, it can dirty the inner corner, so don't do that. Okay, so now I'm going to take some wild ruby, and this is a pencil brush, or it's like a smudge brush. This smudge brush is from Keling. It's a really great brush and I like it a lot. And what I'm going to do is just put the wild ruby dry in the V. So I'm going to start just along the lash line right here on the outer quarter, I would say, and then just follow your eye, unless you have downturned eyes, in which case stop a little bit before you go all the way down and then come up to make the top of the V. Get some more eyeshadow. So, and then you can connect the point, and you're just going to gently blend it into the crease here. Now you don't want to go above the crease because you have the nice little smush of vintage ruby above the crease, and so the wild ruby is just going to give you some darkening in the corner, make it a little more sophisticated, I guess. Something. Just add a little something. So I don't know if you can see that, but you have this nice gradation of color, and then you have a little darkening in the V, but you still have this sort of lighter vintage ruby peeking up above the crease. Okay, I'm just going to take some wild ruby wet, and I'm not going to really wing it out. I'm just going to sort of try to go to the point of the V with my lining. So it'll just sort of blend in with the darkened bit that you did. And this is just the liner concealer brush from Sally Beauty Supply. Okay. Now, you might not need to do this step, but if you feel like the edges of your vintage ruby are a little bit too harsh, you can just take a brush like this. This is a crease brush. It's a synthetic crease brush from Sonia Kashik, or whatever her name is. I don't know if she makes this anymore, but I like this brush because it's stiff enough that you can really get a lot of color on there. But just blend out the very edge of the vintage ruby, and it just softens it just a little bit. But you might not need to do that. I'm not sure I really needed to do that, but you get the idea. You can brighten the inner corners too if you feel like you need a little more in there. But that's basically it. Thanks for watching.